You all must already know the Straw Hat Crew, right? This one pirate crew really gives the Navy and the world government the biggest headaches. Even though we're often shown that all their behaviors are ridiculous, behind that lies a dark past that they experience. So in this video, we will discuss the past of each Straw Hat Crew member completely. So without further ado, let's begin the discussion. Nami was born in the middle of a battlefield and became an orphan as a baby. Luckily, she was found by Belmer, a former female Marine. Belmer adopted Nami and Nojiko as her children and brought them home to Kokoyashi village. Since childhood, Nami loved maps and the weather and had a dream of drawing a map of the entire world. However, everything started to change with the arrival of Arlong. When Arlong invaded Kokoyashi village, he forced every resident to pay a tribute of life. And if any resident didn't pay, Arlong would take their life. Because Belmer didn't have enough money at that time to pay for Nojiko and Nami, she sacrificed her own life so that her children could live. However, after Arlong took Belmer's life, he saw Nami's talent for drawing maps and forced her to become the navigator of the Arlong pirates. Besides forcing Nami to become the navigator of the Arlong pirates, he also offered Nami to buy back Kokoyashi village for 100 million berries so that all the villagers could be free from the tribute of life. After Nami agreed to his deal, Nami then became a thief from other pirates with the hope of buying back Kokoyashi village. However, because Arlong also secretly betrayed Nami, all the money that Nami had worked hard to steal was confiscated by a Marine who was in league with Arlong. But luckily, Luffy helped Nami at that time and defeated Arlong, so the entire Kokoyashi village was freed from Arlong's grasp. And as a thank you for Luffy saving her home, Nami then joined the Straw Hat Crew in the final moments of their departure. Usopp was born in Syrup Village and lived without his father since childhood, who chose to leave to become a pirate in Shank's crew. His mother passed away when Usopp was still young. Since then, Usopp grew up alone and tried to entertain himself by running around the village shouting pirates are coming. Because of this habit, the villagers labeled Usopp as a liar and an attention seeker. Usopp grew up lying and making up great adventure stories to entertain himself and his little friends. One of the people closest to Usopp was Kaya. Usopp often secretly came to Kaya's mansion to entertain her with his made-up adventure stories. However, everything changed when Usopp found out that Kaya Butler was actually a pirate named Kuro. Kuro planned to kill Kaya and seize her family's wealth. However, Usopp tried to warn Kaya and the villagers, but no one believed him because of his reputation as a liar. Fortunately, Luffy, Zoro, and Nami arrived in the village at that time and helped Usopp defeat Kuro. And after the village was safe and Kaya was free from the threat, Usopp felt that he had failed as a protector and wanted to become stronger. So when Luffy invited him to join the ship, Usopp gladly accepted and officially joined as the sniper of the Straw Hat Crew. Sanji was born as a nobleman in the Germa Kingdom and was the son of Vinsmoke Judge, a mad scientist who created his children to be emotionless soldiers. However, because his mother rejected the experiment and took an antidote during pregnancy, Sanji was born as the only child who still had a heart and feelings. As a result, he was considered a failure by his family. Sanji grew up being relentlessly bullied by his 3 older brothers, and even his own father locked him in a dungeon and removed his name from the family's lineage. However, his older sister secretly cared for Sanji, and eventually helped him escape the kingdom. Sanji then fled and boarded a passenger ship called the Orbit, but the ship was attacked by the pirate Zeph, and when a storm came, Sanji and Zeph were stranded together on a barren rock island without food. And after 85 days, they were finally rescued and built a floating restaurant called Bharati. Sanji lived there as a chef, but still harbored his secret childhood dream of finding all blue. When Luffy and his crew came to Bharati, Sanji got into a major conflict with Don Krieg, and after seeing Luffy's courage and great ambition, Sanji began to reconsider his own dreams. And after being encouraged by Zeph and the other chefs, Sanji finally decided to leave Bharati and join Luffy as the cook on the Straw Hat ship. Nico Robin was born on Ohara Island and grew up under the care of an aunt who treated her poorly. She was ostracized by the villagers because she possessed strange abilities from a devil fruit. The only place Robin felt accepted was the Tree of Knowledge, where archaeologists researched the world's history. And since childhood, Robin had a dream of uncovering the truth of history by reading the poneglyphs. However, everything began to change when the world government learned of Ohara's illegal activities in researching the Void Century. The government initiated a buster call to destroy the entire island. However, Robin managed to escape through an ice path created by Aokiji, and became the sole survivor of the O'Hara tragedy. After that, the world government framed Robin and called her the Devil Child of O'Hara, placing a bounty of 79 million berries on her head. Since then, Robin lived on the run for decades, moving from place to place and often being betrayed by people she trusted. To survive, Robin joined criminal organizations and eventually worked with Crocodile as an agent of Baroque works under the name Miss All Sunday. However, after Crocodile was defeated by Luffy and Alabasta, and her life was saved by Luffy, Robin suddenly appeared on the ship and asked to join. Zoro was born in Shimotsuki Village and became an orphan at a young age. Because he had no parents, he lived independently and began learning swordsmanship at the village dojo. From the beginning, Zoro had a strong determination to become the strongest, but he always lost to Quina, the daughter of the dojo owner, who was also a skilled swordsman. After fighting 2,000 times and constantly losing, Zoro and Quina finally made a promise together that one of them would become the greatest swordsman in the world. However, everything began to change when Quina died after falling down the stairs. Quina's death greatly impacted Zoro, and he finally swore to keep their promise by becoming the #1 swordsman in the world. After growing up, Zoro became a pirate hunter for money and continued to search for Mihawk. However, everything changed when he was captured by the Marines in Shellstown for defending a small child from the evil of the Marine Captain Morgan's son. Zoro was then tied to a post and almost executed until Luffy came and saved him. After Luffy returned his swords and defeated Morgan, Zoro accepted Luffy's invitation to join, on the condition that he could still pursue his dream of becoming the #1 swordsman. Tony Chopper was born as a blue-nosed reindeer who was considered strange and ostracized by the other reindeer from a young age, but one day he ate a devil fruit that allowed him to speak and think like a human. However, everything began to change when he transformed into a half-human, making his appearance even more terrifying, until he was rejected by the reindeer herd and also driven away by humans who shot at him because they thought he was a monster. In a dying and lonely state, Chopper was then found by Dr. Hiruluk, who treated him with affection. Since then, Chopper regarded Hiruluk as his own father, and dreamed of becoming a great doctor. But unfortunately, Hiruluk turned out to have a serious illness, and soon died after drinking poisonous mushrooms that Chopper had accidentally given him. After Hiruluk's passing, Chopper was taken in by Dr. Kuraha and learned real medicine for many years. But everything began to change with the arrival of Luffy and his crew to Drum Island, which was then ruled by King Wapol. After witnessing Luffy's struggle to protect his friends, and the Straw Hat crew's bravery against Wapol, Chopper became inspired, and after receiving Kureha's blessing, Chopper finally mustered the courage to join Luffy and become the official doctor of the Straw Hat crew. Brooke was a musician and a crew member of the Rumbar Pirates. On that ship, Brooke found his new family and lived a life full of laughter, especially with Laboon, a small whale that followed them all the way to Reverse Mountain. But because they were worried Laboon was too small for the Grand Line, they left him at the lighthouse with a promise to return after sailing around the world. Unfortunately, the Rumbar Pirates were attacked by another pirate crew, and one by one its members died from poison. Brooke, who had eaten the devil fruit, should have been able to come back to life, but because his body was lost in the fog of the sea, his soul found his corpse after his body had become just bones. After reviving as a living skeleton, Brooke was trapped alone on a ghost ship for decades and lived in solitude. However, when Luffy first met Brooke, he immediately invited Brooke to join his crew because he liked his music and felt they were a good fit. After helping the Straw Hat crew face Thriller Bark and fulfilling his promise to come back to life, Brooke finally officially joined as the crew's musician. Jimby was born on Fishman Island and joined the Rugu Kingdom army from a young age. However, Jimby later decided to join the Sun Pirates, formed by Fisher Tiger. Jimby greatly respected Fisher Tiger and inherited his spirit of freedom and justice. However, after Fisher Tiger died for refusing a blood transfusion from humans, Jimby became even more aware of the deep wounds between humans and fishmen. After Fisher Tiger's death, Jimby became the new captain of the Sun Pirates, and eventually accepted an offer to become a Shichibukai in order to protect Fishman Island from the threat of the world government. Years later, Jimby met Luffy in Impel Down Prison, and then fought together to save Ace in Marineford. However, after Ace's death, Jimby helped Luffy recover mentally and physically, and finally promised to dedicate his life to supporting Luffy's dream. After helping Luffy on Whole Cake Island against Big Mom, Jimby officially left the Big Mom Pirates alliance and decided to join the Straw Hat crew. Frankie was born with the original name Cutty Flam and was abandoned by his parents, who were pirates. Luckily, he was adopted by Tom, who was a legendary shipwright from Water 7. Since childhood, Frankie loved building warships and strange weapons that he called Battle Frankie, and he had a dream of building the greatest ship in the world. However, everything began to change when the world government wanted to arrest Tom for his involvement in building the Pirate King's ship. At that time, Tom sacrificed himself so that Frankie and Iceberg could remain free and continue their dreams. But before being taken away to Enies lobby, Tom gave permission to hand over the Pluton blueprints to Iceberg as a sign of trust. Frankie, who was still emotional, refused to say goodbye and tried to stop the sea train carrying Tom, but was hit and nearly died. Although Frankie survived, his body was severely damaged. He then rebuilt his body into a cyborg using ship parts and lived on the run with a false identity named Frankie. Years later, Frankie became involved in a conflict with the Straw Hat crew for stealing their money and kidnapping Usopp. However, everything changed when Luffy and his crew saved him from the threat of CP9 and the world government who wanted to seize the Pluton blueprints. After witnessing the Straw Hat crew's courage in burning Enies lobby to save Robin, as well as witnessing their dreams, Frankie finally decided to build his dream ship and set sail with them. With the help of the money he had previously stolen, Frankie built the ship Thousand Sunny as the Straw Hat crew's main ship and joined the Straw Hat crew. Luffy was born in Fuchsia Village and lived with Garp, who was a vice admiral in the Marines. Luffy's dream of becoming a pirate began when he met Shanks. Shanks and his crew often hung out at the local bar and became role models for young Luffy, who was obsessed with becoming a pirate. One day, Luffy accidentally ate a devil fruit that Shanks had brought, turning his body into rubber and making him unable to swim for the rest of his life. However, the most life-changing event for Luffy was when he was taken hostage by mountain bandits and almost eaten by a sea monster. Shanks came to Luffy's rescue and willingly lost his arm for his life. Since then, Luffy became even more determined to become a pirate, and he vowed to overcome all obstacles in the sea to become the king of the pirates. After Shanks left, Luffy grew up with his two adoptive brothers, Ace and Sabo, under Garp's strict training and the care of the mountain bandit Dadan. And after Luffy turned 17, he then decided to set sail to sea and find crew members to form his own pirate crew. So, that's the story of each Straw Hat member's past. Which one do you like? Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.